Welcome to the Harper Tech Academy. This is the second video for the Microsoft Azure Titanic predictor. And this is the final video. If you have not seen the setup video or part one, then you really need to go back and actually have a look at that. So at the end of our last part, we have deployed the web service. So we've basically gone in, and you'll notice it's given an input and an output, and it's collapsed down some of our different models together. Now, it's really important to understand the difference between an input and an output. So what we want, and at the moment it's not ideal, we need to change this, is we don't want the web service inputting just after the database. We actually want it to go through the 80-20, so that 80% of the data is used for the experiment. Then we have the 20% data to actually score the model, evaluate it so that it works each time. So what we're going to do here with our input is we're going to click on the connector here. We're going to delete that. And what we're going to do is bring this down and connect it through the score model. So we want it to input there so that it goes through this 80-20, otherwise we've wasted a lot of our time. Now, the other thing is the web service output. I'm going to show you that in a minute. We actually want to do one thing before it comes from the scoring model through to actually outputting as a web service. So I'm going to delete this connector. I'm going to put in select column, and I'm going to use the select columns in the database. So I'm going to connect these up and the web output. Now, the last thing you'll see here, I need a value. So what I need to do is at the top, we've told the machine learning, these are the columns that you need to use to actually ascertain it's survived. Then it goes through the 80-20 split. At the end here, we also need to look at what to score the model and to do the web output. We want these same columns, otherwise it just doesn't work. So I've clicked up the launch column selector. I go to all columns in the with rules. I want to include all scored labels. Now, the scored labels are, as I said, all of the columns that we've chosen at the start. Make sure at each step you actually click your tick, otherwise it doesn't save. So being a visual interface, I'm just going to bring this down. Now, the next step is we need to click run and check it, make sure it still works. So it's now going to go through that period of checking each, and it's done. So then you click deploy web service, and it's actually going to spool. I've already done it. What you'll end up here is a new web service. Now, you may have heard of the API key. So a lot of the programs, apps that you use have actually got in the background, they've got AI working. So one API or web service is actually connected through to the app. And this is how this works. So at the end of the day, I can actually connect up as a set of fire database, or I could get it to predict the temperature in 100 years with global warming data. So it's really, really cool. Now, what we get here is our spreadsheets. Now, before we go, so I'm going to click this one here, Excel, accept that. What that's going to do, it's going to download the Excel sheet. Now open that up. And what I'm going to get here is I need to enable editing. Now remember at the start when we set up the Excel spreadsheet, if you've got your department email, you need to actually sign that out for this to work. So at the moment what it's doing is it's loading up the Azure Microsoft Machine Learning add-in that we did before. What you're going to notice here now, we have our web service. So I'm going to open that. Now, let me explain. Now we were talking about the input. So the input is actually coming in after the 80-20 split. That's it there. And these are the columns we're going to use. And the output is the predictive nature of it. So we're going to click Use Sample Data. And basically you'll notice it gives me the class, the gender, age, and fair. Now remember, we can actually do this for all 1,300 of the people that were on the Titanic that are in the database. And really, really important, we actually need to define our range, which is from A1, which is from A1 to D6, and click OK. If you have not got this here, it does not work. Now the next thing we need to do is I actually want to put my output, this is the predictive nature, in E1. So it's a capital E and 1. So it's now defined that this is where my data is going to go. Now predicting will override existing values. This cannot be undone. You go, got it, and then we're going to hit predict. Now what we have here now is you'll notice it's put the age and the fair there again. Now the scored model, all right? So this one here, if they survived, it's 1. If they did not survive, it was 0. Now you can play around with this and actually go and add different sample data. Now the way it works here is, I'll see here female. So this lady, she was in first class. She was 25. She paid $151, but she didn't survive. So we can start to play around. Let's say she paid $250, right? And she was 12. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click predict. And you'll notice that the data's changed. So if she'd spent more and she was younger, she was more likely to actually survive. And you'll see here the second score here is the probability. So 1 is definitely half. So we can play around with this. Okay, so we've got a male 30. So let's see if we put in, he paid 300. And let's see what happens. So this female here, she's 2. She paid 151. So let's see what happens if she was 12 and she was in second class. All right. So we'll now predict that and see what happens. Click out. So you'll see straight away that even she was 12 and not 2, and that she was female, she paid the same fare, she survived, which is interesting, isn't it? So if I then change this and the male survived, so he was in first class, if I put in she's a male and she was 30 and in second class, paid the same amount of money, click out to make it predict. And no, she would not have survived. So I hope you've enjoyed this. It seems very simple bringing it down into Excel, but it basically really explains how machine learning and AI is working in the background of pretty much a lot of things that we work with. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have had problems, then go back over through the OneNote. But remember, the little trick here is to actually, the sheet define from A1 to D6. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time at the Harper Tech Academy.